what's up, everybody? This is Paul with ForReal, and I am here with Ron St. Pierre, who really needs no introduction. Again, we'll go back to the Tim Moore's video. If you don't know who Ron is, hit the pause button, jump onto Google, hit it. Ron's got a bunch of podcasts and other YouTube stuff that he's out there on. And man, if you don't know, you're missing out. So Ron, thanks for coming on. It's great to have you here.
Good to be here, man.
So we're going to start off with a big one right out of the gate. You've been around in the reptile industry for a long time. And again, if those don't know, if you don't know the stories, just jump on, man. You'll find some great stuff from back in the day. Where do you see the industry going right now?
I mean, I don't know. I kind of go back and forth. I think in general, the fact that we've grown to such an enormous proportion that, I mean, you know, when I got started, I was actually started doing this professionally when I was around 19 years old, 18, 19. Mm-hmm. So I pretty much done this my entire life. And at that point, I mean, it was people, you know, my parents thought I was crazy because, they're like, nobody can make a living breeding lizards. And I was like, well, we'll see about that. But so back then it was just totally niche. It was basically just a bunch of hardcore reptile nerds, and never envisioned that it would be what it's grown into. So I think that because of that exponential growth, particularly, I mean, honestly, COVID's been really good for the reptile industry as a whole.
Oh yeah.
Stuff, it sells immediately. I mean, I've never seen sales at the rate and the ferocity that they're occurring. I mean, they get angry when you tell them, look, I'm out of stuff, you know. That's not something that I've ever experienced before. So I think all that kind of protects us a little bit from legislation, because when, you know, it's an unfortunate fact that the money talks. So if you can go to the congressmen and the senators and all these guys and say, look, if you clamp down on us, you're going to lose all this tax revenue, they will generally change their tune. I think they'll make sacrificial lambs out of as they've already done, obviously with the Burmese pythons and stuff like that, and the tegu thing. But I think in general, that's just to appease the public and make it look like, oh yeah, we're doing something about these evil reptile people. Meanwhile, they're going to look the other way on almost everything else, because again, and if they do try to go after it, because you do have the animal rights people pushing, I don't think it's an uphill battle for USARK, but I think they will win more often than not, because they can go and say, look, this industry generates this amount of revenue. If you want to take that out now and damage your political careers because your people are not doing well in this economy, and an economy that's already, you know, hurting from all this mess we've inherited or created, or however you want to view it. So I think that's hopeful from that aspect, as far as, you know, being legislated out of existence. So I think we're in a decent spot. I don't think it's the doom and gloom that a lot of people do, because I think when you look outside, if you get past, you know, the headlines, and it's also important that we support USARK. I mean, they definitely need all of us, even if it's a couple of bucks. I mean, if everybody sends $1 and 1 million people send $1, that's a decent budget for almost nothing for everybody. But
yeah.
So
I guess one of the biggest, so to me, one of the things that you know, me and others have talked about is looking forward into the future. Legislation is one of the big things. The industry has, like you said, such exponential growth. And, you know, I mean, I've talked to a couple of people that have said the same thing. They're like, man, cage sales are through the roof. Animal sales are through the roof. We can't keep stuff on the shelves. You can't find certain products in certain places. You know, things that I was going to certain stores to buy, they don't have anymore because there's just not enough of it out there.
Yeah.
But when we look at the industry as a whole, the legislation from state to state is getting tighter and tighter. New
Yep.
York trying to ban all shipping,
Yeah,
which
that's a
is,
scary one.
yeah, that's insane.
Yep.
You have, what is it, North Carolina looking at Tegu bans.
Tegus, yep.
You have Florida. The end of next week is the big meeting about the CSP, along with the Tegu and iguana stuff. Alabama, I think it was a year or two ago with the big snake rules.
They also banned Tegus this year.
Yeah, so more and more of this stuff is coming out, and I understand, like I've talked about US Arc before, and it's like it's a reactionary entity that does such a good job at what they do. They've gotten so good at coming in and hitting these things hard, but I still think as like-minded groups of people, we need to get together instead of fighting with one another and have more more foresight on what's happening in our state. So if you hear something, you can get in touch with somebody to get in front of it before it becomes an issue. And USARC has that huge uphill battle now to fight. Maybe they're coming in and fighting on a level playing field. Does that sound like something that makes sense and could possibly work?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think in most instances that's already more or less happening. Probably not to the level that it needs to be, but I mean, in general, you have a few people everywhere, in every state that sound the alarms when this stuff comes up. The problem with it is we live in the freaking misinformation age, man, and there's just so much background noise and bull crap thrown around that you actually, I mean, I spent the better part of a couple days of this week having to research rumors of other bans that I heard in Florida, and when I researched them, I found they were not based in any sort of, at least so far, government thing. It was just rumors. They all trace back to the same initial source. So I was like, okay, this is just somebody that got excited about something and said something, and it's just the rumor mill. So you've got all that stuff going on that pollutes the water, makes it even harder for USARC, and I would imagine anyway.
Yeah.
When you're receiving all this information, then you got to try to figure out what's factual and what's not. So I think in general they're doing a good. I think they need to be bigger, and I think they will over time. I think but in order for them to be bigger, they need all of us to get on board, and we're still somewhat fragmented, like you said. We're just not as unified as we need to be. But I think that will come with time. I think if you look at the fish industry, which has a good 30-40 years on us, I would imagine. That's what I think. They are much more a cohesive unit. They have a lot. They do some things that I disagree with. Some of the monopolies and stuff they have, but I mean, for the most part, though, they're pretty unified in not unified, but they have a powerful lobbying thing. They get a lot of love from PJAC because obviously they're a big part. But now the reptiles are a big part of the pet trade now. Petco's, the bearded dragon is one of the biggest selling. Yeah, I think it's second only to dogs and cats.
Yeah. Not surprising.
Yeah. So, and that's actually kind of a funny thing, man. It's about one of the hardest. They're not simple. I mean, they're not easy. They're very complicated setup. They require heat. They require UV. They require a varied diet. They have all these requirements that make them not really, like a blue-tongued skink is way more suitable for little Timmy as a first pet because it eats cat food, can live in a big blanket box, kind of thing, or 40-gallon. It's very simple. Doesn't require all this stuff. Crested gecko is another one, very simple, but bearded dragons, it's because they make eye contact with you. They're the perfect size, so people will jump all those extra hurdles.
So I have a great friend that I work with, and from probably the very start, he was, "You're a reptile guy? I hate snakes. I shoot them. Everything is a European death tree viper. So he says to me one day, I want to get my daughter a pet. What do you think? He's like, I was thinking about a chameleon, and I looked at him and I said, you hate reptiles. How's that going to work? And he's like, well, what do you think? And I said, no chameleons. I said, that's a horrible idea. They require so much, and if she wants to touch it, you're kind of out the window. I said, but a bearded dragon, you know, if you're looking for something like that, I said, you know, we have one that we will gladly, you know, evict to come and live with you, and we'll just give you all the stuff, the setup. And so she takes this bearded dragon, and he's like, I can't believe how cool this is. He's sending me pictures. He's walking around with it on his chest. He's like, this is the most amazing animal in the world. You know, he's like, that it comes up to the glass when you walk in, it bobs its head at you. You know, he's to the point that he's actually come to my house now and held a ball python, which I never thought would have happened. And it's
That's
like,
how it starts.
Exactly. And, you know, it's funny that you're right. They require way more than, you know, like a crested gecko. I always tell people I think a crested gecko is arguably the best pet to have. They can live in 78 degrees. Your house is generally 78 degrees. You can put a light on them if you want. You don't have to. You can plant a nice tank. They eat food from a bag. I mean, what more can you ask for? You don't have to go to the pet store and get crickets, you know. I mean, and people are just, you know, they see that bearded dragon or even a blue-tongued skink, and they're like, man, I got to have this. And, you know, usually it spurs off from there. So, you know, some of the scary things is, and I don't know if you caught this, did you see the article about Ty, that he won his battle with Fish and Wildlife?
Yeah, I got about 5-6 texts with the copies of that when that happened.
Yeah. So I look at what we do when we keep things outside, and escaped animals is a bad thing. And I know that you guys keep, you know, your stuff outside, and Dave was out there and got some great video, and man, the setups are amazing. What is your security measure for everything that you have as far as your outside enclosures?
I mean, we just use heavy duty materials, and we build the cages properly. They're all built by us. You know, I don't have employees. Nope. I mean, I have had a guy that after I built this for the big monitor thing, that enormous enclosure, it was really too much for me and Heather to do by ourselves. So we built one, and then I had a guy that's very trustworthy and reliable come out that's really good, and he built all the rest of the units and added it all and built the whole thing. Right. But other than that, all the other ones, the dragon enclosures. I mean, honestly, man, I've been keeping stuff outside in Florida for since I was 18. I'm 52 now. So what's that? 34 years.
Yep.
But many of which very large scale. There was a time where I had 250 tegus. I lived in Loxahatchee. You will not find one single tegu there. Now, in 2002, I used to raise the baby tegus in my garage, and I had 250-pound English Mastiffs. And I don't know if you're familiar with those at all, but they basically have a baseball bat for a tail. And one of them knocked a tank off of the like a 20-gallon long that was on a shelf that had some baby hybrid tegus in it. He knocked it off. We weren't home. The tegus eventually, they got loose in the garage, and then they found a way out where the garage door didn't seal properly. Within 4 days, we caught all but one, and 2 months later, we got the final one on Christmas Day because it fell in a neighbor's pond, and they found it frozen and floating, and it was still alive.
Okay.
But 100% of them. But the reason that happened, though, is that when I realized that I had animals get loose, that I then devoted the entirety of my following days to do nothing but hunt those things down. And the nice thing about captive bred lizards is when they escape, they generally don't go anywhere. If you get them pretty quick, they're usually hanging out either right near where they got away or right in the immediate vicinity. It's not terribly difficult. So, I mean, I've been pretty harsh on him about that. I actually removed all ties with him because of this incident. I feel like what happened out there is inexcusable, particularly under the circumstances. If you have knowledge of the whole thing, it just shouldn't have happened, and it kept happening over and over and over again for years. I mean, I knew about this 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, so I've heard the same. I've heard the same from other people that have been down there, and you know, I again back to what you just said. When you're dealing with fish and wildlife, and I read that article, and I shake my head because you know we have the facility that I volunteer at to do my venomous stuff. They've had to go through inspections with Fish and Wildlife, and Fish and Wildlife is cracking down, and they're looking at things, you know,
Yep.
really close to the point where they're taking calipers out and measuring fence. You know,
Yep.
it's got to be this, it can't be that. You
Yep.
know, and they're taking permits away from people that are doing it right.
Yep.
And then something like this happens, and I laughed. You know, I mean, we all talked in our group chat. You know, oh, how did they come up with 200 animals? And I said, well, could it have been 200 complaints? I don't know, but regardless, if we're letting animals out as keepers, how can we? You can't fight that. Once somebody
No.
comes to you and says, "Hey, your monitor, two monitors get out and attack dogs,"
Yep.
that's just right there. It's like it goes from, "Hey, your iguana got out and tore my screen enclosure on my pool," to, "Hey, your Croc monitor got out and bit the head off of my dog."
5 or 6 months ago, they caught an adult lace monitor out there in somebody's garage.
That's, to me, that's insane. That's I just, and I get it. Money talks, and unfortunately, that's just the down. I think that's the downfall of a lot of the things that we work so hard to get to. Is, you know, when you have money, or when a lobbyist or HSUS, PETA, one of these people have money to throw out there to somebody, that's where these rules come from. You know, I held my CSP and I got rid of it last year when all this stuff came up. I said, you know, it's just a matter of time now. You know, they're knocking on the door. They're just looking for a reason, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's a case of gross negligence. You'll not hear, I have no sympathy for that. There's absolutely no excuse. There is
Yeah,
no excuse. You can have an escape. Everybody can have an escape. I mean, people's dogs sometimes get out of a fence, but it's how yeah, and it's how you handle it after the fact that matters. And when it's a habitual thing that continues to happen, that's a real problem. That shows that I'm not going to speculate on that, but you can make your own opinion. But
yeah,
I mean,
listen, I'll say it. That shows that you have very little respect for what you're doing, and maybe not knowledge, but again, respect for that. You know, if you're leaving cage doors open, here's my thing. When I read in there that the contractor built the enclosure and the animal got out, listen, I understand. I build all my own stuff. I get it. It happens. But here's the deal. When you're keeping an animal outside now, you have to be that much more hyper focused on what you're doing. And that's why I asked you guys. You have beautiful setups. Everything looks fantastic. You know, I just wanted your opinion on, hey, we're in Florida. We have the best of both worlds. Every time I talk to somebody from another state, they're like, man, you guys got it so good. You can keep animals outside. You don't have any issues. It's the perfect climate.
Yeah.
But, you know, that can bite you in the ass when we're looking at, you know, some of the stuff that's happening in the headlines that we get.
Yeah. And that's always been one of my priorities, is to stay out of that stuff. So I do everything possible not to have accidents happen, even though they can, and not to have, you know, but definitely, I mean, I would have never allowed that, because if you have reptiles running around and you have neighbors, somebody's going to get pissed off. And I mean, people don't like them. So you have to respect your neighbors and not inflict yourself on them with your nonsense at some point. So I've always, generally where I've lived, my neighbors have embraced what I do. They've kind of treated it like their own little zoo. I've always kept everything open to all them. You know, most of the kids, you know, growing up that were around my daughter's age, they hung out at the house and they, you know, walked around and did all that. And all my neighbors loved it. I mean, I never had a single complaint. And I've lived in 4 different locations, and 3 of those were very residential. So, but I mean, you know, I'm responsible with it. I mean, it's not hard and that's the thing that pisses me off about it, because it's really not hard to be responsible. You know, I don't have cash that I can just allow, you know, animals worth thousands of dollars to be running all over the place either. I mean, so if you just want to look at it from a selfish standpoint, in that regard. You should do it for that reason. But if you, you know, actually give a damn, then you need to look at it from more angles than that. And that, you know, you have neighbors, they may or may not appreciate your 7-foot lace monitor or Croc monitors running around, and you do everything in your power. Not to mention animals like crocodile monitors are dangerous.
Yeah,
They're
this is
dangerous for me, and I've been working with those animals since I was for 30 years.
Yep.
I mean, they're, you know, I know everybody sees the tame ones and the tame ones are great and all that, but it doesn't matter once it gets out in the sun and it's loose and it's scared and it's out of its environment, and some kid or some unknowing person approaches that thing, and a bite from a Croc monitor is catastrophic. It's not like some of the other things. I mean, it's a serious bite. That to me, it's on the line as far as a dangerous bite goes. I can't think of another reptile that has a more dangerous bite for its size. The only thing you could maybe, you know, is venomous stuff and like giant crocodilians. But I mean, I've worked with hundreds of species of large snakes and lizards and stuff, and nothing has ever done the kind of damage to me personally that a baby Croc monitor did. I cannot imagine what a hatchling would do. I mean,
that's one of the stories that, you know, if people look and they find the podcast and stuff that you've done, that's one of the things that really stuck with me. We used to have a 2-hour drive to work, so me and my son would listen to all these podcasts, and we would look for, you know, Brian Sharp, you know, all the, you know, Mike Wilbanks, and listen to all the stories from the past. And that story about the first Croc monitor you hatched out and grabbing that little baby and it's slicing through your finger like a razor blade. It's like, man, seeing Tom get bit by one, you know, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Toms. It is what it is. Tom is Tom. But man, that whole series, like we followed that. That is, for as fast as he said it was, that's scary. That's extremely scary.
He actually called me on the phone when he was on his way to the hospital from that bite. He's like, man, I got nipped. And he said, I can't believe it. He said, it was just a nip. And it was an accident. Yeah.
That's insane. Could you imagine, like you just said, could you imagine a little kid throwing a ball, the ball landing in some trees, and that little kid going to grab that ball, and that lizard just coming out of nowhere and just grabbing his hand and getting a full on, you know, if that was just a nip, you could lose a hand. I mean,
yeah, the good thing about them is that they're generally non-confrontational. They're not like a tegu will charge you if it's cornered, but a Crocs always just try to get away. But, you know, if it was cornered and some kid thought it was harmless and grabbed, I mean, the bite from that to somebody to just anybody, even if it was just an unsuspecting, you know, just an idiot that ran in there and jumped on it that didn't know what it was and got bit, the press from that would absolutely, they would use that would be a never let a crisis go to waste moment. They would use that as a hammer like they do with everything to beat the hell out of us. So that kind of stuff can't happen.
Yeah, the difference between a defensive bite and I call it an offensive bite and a food response bite, they're so different. They're all so different. So we work with venomous snakes. I've had the pleasure of seeing some amazing animals, but there's one particular group, the Western green mambas, that they're so fast, they're so accurate, and they are so smart and willing to bite. That, you know, we had a one pre-killed rat left, and Cody's like, well, listen, I'm just going to slide this over and I'm just going to toss it in and shut the door. You know, I don't want to open the cage up. I don't want to deal with that. So just stand back. So he grabs it, opens the door, and just tosses that pre-killed rat. And as it goes into the cage, that snake glides 6 feet through the air, hits that thing, and it was so fast that offensive attack, so much different than watching as you're working the snake and you're bringing him out. It's looking for how to get to you physically in a defensive mode. Right. And then a giant retic, you know, that I had, that she had just laid and she was hungry, and she grabbed my wrist, and it was just a grab a hold, get a coil around. I stopped her and held her back. Within a few seconds, she let me go. She just released. And it was way different. There was just a few puncture holes. You know, there was quite a bit of blood, but it stopped. And it was like, okay, this is, you know, but I'm assuming that something to that effect is going to be detrimental from an animal like that if they're scared.
Yeah, I mean, I think in their case, it won't really matter only because their dentition is so serious. I mean, their teeth are just, like I said, the hatchling that bit me, literally, it was just it was a scared bite where I mean, it didn't even put any pressure. You know, it looked like you took razor blades and split my finger from one end to the other with a razor blade. So, and Tom's bite he was trying to break two up that were fighting, and it just kind of was a leave me alone, just a nip, and it put him in the hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, didn't he had to have surgery and everything, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah. So you working with the Croc monitors, right? You have some of those, and you have
actually I was, but I made the decision with all the stuff going on. And once some of that incident you were talking about, I was like, you know what? So I went ahead and I sold them. They went to a friend of mine that will do right by them. So with big monitors, the only thing that I'm working with are lace monitors, Spencers, and Mertens, which all of those are on the smallish side.
Yeah,
they're not. The lace are the biggest thing I have, and they're only maybe 6 feet. And but since they're arboreal, they're a lot of tail, so they're not really. They're actually very. I love those things to death. That's for me. That was the holy grail thing I always wanted to work with. And when a couple of investors came to me and said, "Hey, I'd like to put these on loan with you. Would you be interested?" I was like, "Yep, I'll do that."
Yeah, so, there was no thought.
Yeah,
this is the dream.
Up until 2 years ago, I would not take a breeding loan from anybody. Now, nearly everything that I have here is owned by investors. But I went through a divorce and a bunch of other stuff happened. So, and then Heather and I got together, and she was just primarily working on bearded dragons at the time. So, when these friends of mine came up, and one of them's Ryan Johnson, he's fairly well known, and my buddy Scott Saunders. So they were like, you know what? Let's go at this hard. We'll set you up with a whole bunch of stuff. Ryan sent over a huge portion of his collection, and Scott's been buying up, good stuff when he finds it. So we now have amassed on the property. We've got, really good projects, a lot of really good blue tongue projects, a lot of really good monitor projects, and the Anoles.
Yeah, the Anoles are insane. They're some of the greatest looking animals. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'm hoping though that at least the Podior may appear, especially after that Kaufman video. I don't know if you saw that, but that really just. I've been off social media. I deleted it all. Usually in the wintertime, right around the end of October, I'll usually just step away. So until spring, and then I reinstall it all. So I reinstalled my Facebook app like 2 weeks ago because somebody tried to hack my account, so I had to shore it up. And I couldn't believe how many messages I got from the Kaufman video about the Podior. I can't even read. I haven't even opened 99% of them because it's just there's hundreds of them. So
yeah. Well, the thing is you don't see that, and when somebody does see it, they're like, that exists. I mean, the first time I saw a picture, this is the first thing I asked Cody and them was, "Is that real?"
Yeah.
They were like, "Yeah, those are real." Like, what the? I've never seen anything that colorful in that species of animal. I just never seen them.
Yeah. They've been around for about in the States for a while, at least 4 or 5 years. And the guy that was working with them put the entire collection up for sale. And so my buddy Scott bought it.
Okay.
And we got them. So now we have a good sized colony of them. They should be breeding soon, actually, starting to warm up.
Good.
And but yeah, I think that Anole. I mean, I've been working on giant Anoles now since 2013. I've got the albinos and another. I have a joint project with Philippe de Vaugelet with Anoles lutigularis, which is another giant Anole that is almost non-existent in the United States. So there was only a couple of pairs. We put our pairs together, and now we have 20 of them, 25 of them.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, I was able to really get them going. They're producing well. So hopefully next year we might be able to start selling some. But
you have Macuahanas, correct? The Spilotes. Is that
yes?
Okay. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure the exact. I have the. They were produced by this guy Gavin. I can't ever remember his last name. He passed away last year. Anyway, they are the Honduran they're the Mexicanos, but they're a locale cross.
Okay.
They're the Honduran Mexicanos cross with the Tamaulipas uh,
Okay.
locale. So they're giant. They're awesome, man. I
Yeah.
actually, before I came in here and sat down, I just went out and fed them. Um, they they are, but they're a lot like that green mamba. You
Okay.
open up those cages, even though they can't kill you, or they don't even really hurt. Even they don't bite. It's funny.
Uh-huh.
They headbutt though. They strike, but they
Okay.
never actually bite me. They are always just they kind of like knock you and but they always go for your face. And because they're like 7 feet long, they can and the cage they have them in, they're always right at head
Oh
level.
yeah. Of course they are.
Yeah. So you open it up and there's the head coming at you and it knocks you in the forehead and you're like, damn it. But they're
Yeah.
really cool. They I hope are going to breed this year. They're
Mhm.
just now 3 years old. So
And they're kept primarily outside too, correct?
yeah, 100%.
So
I roll them in. We have a building that we roll in um, arboreal stuff
mhm.
when it gets super cold. Um, but it's not even heated. It gets 60 degrees in there. If it's 38, 39 outside, it'll be 60 in there. So, um, and again, because I'm in Florida, I can get away with that.
Yeah,
But
exactly. Exactly.
but the outdoor stuff like the monitors and all that, they have an underground. All my cages have a subfloor,
Okay.
which is that they can go underneath, and it actually puts them underneath the cage, so underneath the substrate and everything. So everything, the blue tongues, all the monitors, all the bearded dragons, all of that stuff goes underneath that during cold weather, and their cages are covered with 6 mil clear plastic that creates sort of a greenhouse effect.
Yep.
And so I use no electricity. The subfloor would be a problem for a lot of people, but for me, it serves a few purposes. One, because I keep stuff outside. Good luck trying to get my animals out from underneath those subfloors once they're under there. So
Really?
yeah, they're screwed down. There's no
Okay.
access except for the hole in the front.
Hmm.
Very, they're generally 4 feet by 4 feet, so they're enormous at
Okay.
a minimum. And everything sleeps under there at night. So I can't get the stuff out without actually unscrewing what it basically amounts to a deck that's buried under 4 inches of cypress mulch.
Wow.
Yeah. So they're totally safe under there. They're protected from everything, including human predators. And, and then,
Which is a need be, I
yeah,
mean, unfortunately,
yep,
but I mean that's a great idea. I mean, twofold security and obviously security for the animal. I'm sure they feel
yep,
very comfortable.
yep. That's the
You
point.
know.
Since no one ever invades their space, that's their secure spot. So if they want to get away from me, they just go underneath there, and nobody's going to violate them.
Hmm.
Only under like if an animal's sick or I actually have to go in there, will I actually do that? And I've maybe gone underneath a subfloor twice in 4 years. So, yeah.
Now I
So
guess
that's
the now I guess the other question would be, what about laying females?
yeah. See, they won't lay under there though because it's bare, right? So
Okay.
there's
Okay.
no substrate in under the subfloor. So when they're underneath substrate, but there's no substrate inside.
Ah. Okay.
So it's
Okay.
kind of like a shelf crack kind of thing, and I
Yeah.
keep it all bare under there just for that reason.
Okay.
Um, and then we give the different nesting areas. Every cage has permanent nesting areas depending on the
Mm.
species. So we just leave it alone, and then when we have to dig it up, when they lay eggs, we just look. We usually see where they've been digging, and they 9 times out of 10 everything lays in the nest spots that we have set up.
That's
Like
good.
for the lace monitors and things like that, I have a twofold approach. They have a giant, basically what amounts to a massive mound of dirt to lay eggs if they want to, and I also give them the cocoa fiber box that most people use for nesting. So they have the choice of both, and I do that for some things that I think are a little more touchy to get eggs out of. That I'll
Hmm.
give a multi-tiered system. But yeah, I mean, when you keep stuff outside, you always need to be mindful of security for the animal so that it can get out of inclement weather whenever it needs to. It's like super important. A lot of people think, you know, and I get this all the time, especially when we've done these videos. We've gotten a lot of people saying, "Oh, I live in Florida. I want to put my bearded dragon outside," and then they send you a photo of it, and they've got a fish tank out in the sun, and I'm like, no, that's not how this works. This is much more. As a matter of fact, we don't even recommend it to anybody to really do what we're doing, because until you have, like, you know, a guy like you could pull it off, but somebody that really doesn't
Somebody new.
yeah, somebody
New.
yeah, exactly. And since then there's all sorts of things, you know, it could escape. You don't want people having stuff get away. You know, we use very, very expensive, heavy gauge, vinyl coated 1/2-inch wire.
Yeah, that's the nicest wire I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, you pay for that one. But the plus side is that you can't. It's a bitch to cut. I mean, it's a nightmare to cut that crap. So no big monitor is going to be able to rip through it. We use, you know, pressure treated 2x3s for lumber. You know, we check the lumber. We, you know, do inspections like every few months to make sure there's no pieces are getting weak, and if there are, they get replaced. I could go with a metal type thing, and that would technically be better, but because I don't know how to work with metal, and because I don't really trust anybody to build my enclosures, and I have to do it myself, you know, my dad taught me how to work with I have rudimentary woodworking skills. I'm really not technically inclined.
No, listen, your setups are amazing. They look great. They look very secure. Like I said, that was merely just let's get that out there, because again, like you just said, people are going to ask, and this was another thing with Tim Morris, was the question of, I saw a meme not too long ago, and that meme said, how is it that we have the middle of the road reptile keepers and they want to shit on the guys like yourself that are up here that have been doing this forever, and then the new people coming in, they want to shit on them too, like they all know more than everybody. And it's like, you know, I don't think anybody really understands how this is truly supposed to work. First of all, be coachable. You know, I was a high school lacrosse coach. I've watched my kids go through sports from the age of 6 all the way up to college sports, and you want to be coachable. So when that newbie posts that picture, hey, you know, this is my outdoor setup, and you go, whoa, no, don't do that. You're going to cook that animal. You know, you have to do it like this. That's coaching somebody. And if that person says, oh man, I didn't know, you know, so I got to do this, this, and this. Well, that's a good thing. But some of these other people are just like, you know, you're an idiot. You're kill this, kill that. You're, you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's, you know, the good thing about social media is it gave everybody a voice.
Yeah.
The bad thing about social media is it gave everybody a voice.
I love it.
And when I run into those, and I have run into those people, I know exactly the type you're talking about. The one word comes to mind when I run into somebody that thinks they know everything that there is to know about this, and that they have answers and their way is the right way and the only way. I think one thing, oh, that's adorable, because it's not in any way. I've been at this for 32 years. I know less today than I did, you know, 32 years ago, or 30 whatever it's been, 34. Yep. So, I mean, I'm still working out proper ways to hydrate this stuff. I don't think we're doing hydration right. I don't think we've ever done it right.
Yeah.
So I've got a bunch of things that I'm messing around with that. We know so little about literally everything. I mean, humans, we've deluded ourselves into thinking that we have all this information. Yeah, we have some information, but you know, what we've learned, even as not even just about reptiles, literally about everything, even the nature of reality. If you go look at, you know, with some of the you know, the top guys that are doing, you know, physics and all this stuff, man, we don't even understand anything. We know nothing. For all we know, we could be trapped in a simulation. None of this shit could be real.
Yep.
We might be NPCs in some kid's freaking video game.
Yep.
I mean, you just don't know. So when somebody comes and then says, you know, you know, this is the only way to keep this lizard and whatever, and you're doing it wrong because you're keeping it outside and doing this, that, and the other thing. And we got a lot of that actually from those videos. We actually had people telling us that bearded dragons couldn't possibly live outside in Florida, that it was bad for them. They were going to die because they couldn't handle humidity, that they needed 16% humidity. That, I don't know where that number came from, but that's cute.
That's a random number.
But we got a bunch of that. And I was thinking, well, I understand that you believe that these things are just out there sitting, baking in sand, being inundated by UV 24 hours a day, and that they, but that's not actually how this works. See, they seek out the humid parts of the desert. Deserts have dew. Dew is covered with everything. And those animals come out in that high dew situation where everything is covered with water and get their water, or they inhale it through water vapor.
Mm-hmm.
They are not just sitting out there doing this thing. And the other thing is the UV light thing. We're starting to see issues, particularly with bearded dragons, but I think you'll see it in other things. Now that the UV lights have gotten good, they're
Mm-hmm.
powerful, you're starting to see what appear to be UV related issues. And when we look into this, it's pretty clear what's happening. For some reason, there's a disconnect in reptile keepers' brains that, okay, this animal likes the sun, so therefore it wants to be blasted by the light 12 hours a day. And yep, and that's good for it. No, honestly, I've collected lots of species of lizards in the wild. I've been doing it since I was a little kid.
Yep.
Lizards are not sitting out in the sun 12 hours a day. As a matter of fact, they generally are only sitting in the sun, maybe an hour at a time in the morning, maybe an hour at a time in the evening. The rest of the time, they're holed up in shady areas because they don't want to be blasted by the light. And neither do you. Would you want to sit in a room for 12 hours with UV lights beating down on you? And how would that make you feel? So they don't give hiding boxes. They blast their lizard with UV, basically, just a few inches from it. And now as the lights are getting powerful, they're starting to cause some issues. And so people need to lizards need security. It's not good for it. Even if you think that bearded dragon loves you, and trust me, there's a lot of people that do.
Oh yeah.
Just like I'm sure you love your family members, but there are times where you just want to get away from them. They need that kind of security. All living things have some base needs, and security is one of them. So if you're not providing them with a hide box so they can get out of the UV that you're trying to blast them with when they need to. So there's all kind of things like that we're doing, and then if you tell people that, you literally have a whole bunch of those people that apparently have not either thought about it, or that they tell you that no, that's not right, they need 12 hours of UV.
Yeah.
No, they don't.
So we met about 4 years ago finally in person at the Repticon show, and I think it was in DeLand. And
I remember that. Yeah,
we sat and we talked about the ultrasonic foggers and misting in the desert and dew and where all these animals are getting the water from. And I remember telling you this, and I'm like, man, so I wasn't crazy because I was reading stuff and thinking there's got to be, but obviously I've never been to Australia, so I don't know. I'm reading the stuff that people read online, and I'm reading the things that say, hey, they don't need this and they don't need that. And I'm thinking, well, what do I know? I've never been there. So we always say snakes don't need UV, right?
Yep.
Snakes don't need UV. Why does a snake need UV? Put it in a shoebox, leave it alone, feed it, it'll be fine. It breeds, it does this, it does that. So at the RPI, which is the Reptile Preservation Institute, shameless plug for Cody and Pia, we designed some, Doug Barr built some cages for them right before Carpet Fest. And when I say right before, these cages literally showed up the Wednesday before Carpet Fest. Thank you, Doug. Which was amazing. He brought them all the way out there to us. It was awesome. So these cages were set up. The big black mamba cages are 8 feet wide, 2 feet deep, 4 feet tall, with I think it's a 2 or 3 foot glass sliding doors for openings. Mm-hmm. There's shift boxes in the top corners and a screen top. So Cody went out and bought the big Power Sun, the 70 watt UVB, UVA, and put those on there. all the green mambas, the Jamesons, the Westerns, and the Easterns, are in 5-foot tall cages by 4 foot wide by 2 foot deep. And they also have shift boxes in the top corners. They also have those lights. So the night that we transferred, this is the night before Carpet Fest, we transferred most of those snakes into those enclosures, and those big lights were on. Where do you think the first place all those animals went to was?
Yeah, they were under the lights.
Within a foot of every single one of them. And I have tons of pictures that they are literally up in the trees, 5 foot up in the air, basking underneath those UV lights. And the other thing is in the Western green mamba cage, there's a pair of Westerns that have produced. Cody and Pia hatched out Western greens this year. Unfortunately, I think there was some humidity issues at the beginning of the incubation, so there was some kinking issues. But there's also Gaboon Viper in there, and that Gaboon Viper has actually been 5 feet up in the air in the shift box.
Yeah, I believe it.
So
yeah, I mean, I keep the Spilotes outside. They bask every morning. They bask every evening. They're no different than any lizard I've ever kept. And it doesn't make sense that snakes don't need UV because snakes bask. I've collected a lot of snakes in the wild, nocturnal snakes, but I used to catch them in the daytime, and I would catch them generally in rock piles with a coil sticking out in the sun. They were warming up, and they were getting UV as a byproduct. Now, whether or not how much of a difference that makes, I think the case for most things appearing that they don't need it is that we probably make up for it good enough with the diets that we feed, the supplements that we add. But is it truly optimal? Would they maybe be better off with maybe having UV? UV definitely, access to sunlight definitely has a psychological effect. You can have lizards that are totally tame inside in a low light situation and move them out in the sunlight, and they are a totally different animal, sometimes for the worst.
Yeah, bearded dragons are
right.
We had them in New York, and we would bring them outside during the summertime, and they would get real dark, and you'd go to grab them, and they would puff up and chase you around. It's like, what happened to you?
Right. Yeah, because they sort of reverted back to they were feeling, I mean, aggressive reptiles, I don't think it's a negative sign in a lot of cases. I think that's, but yeah, to the bearded dragon thing, I mean, that's, and Florida is high humidity, much higher than where they come from for most of their range, but they do have bearded dragons have a fairly wide range. And the one thing that most people don't take into account, I think most people just naturally believe that the bearded dragons that are in U.S. herpetoculture are pure Viticeps. That's not the case. They're a 3-way hybrid for the most part. I think when good DNA comes out, I think eventually they'll look at them and say, oh yeah, look, they've got 2% Brankenii blood. They're 25 to 30% Barbata, and because back in the day, I used to produce 1,000 Barbata a year and 3,000 Viticeps. And when pet stores used to buy 100 lots of bearded dragons, they just wanted a bearded dragon. So they would get some Barbata, some Viticeps. They were all the same price. No one cared. The Barbata were actually harder to sell. And so they're all mixed in. And you can see the influence throughout the herpetoculture bearded dragon. So they're like most things that, like carpet pythons and a lot of that stuff. They're all the ones that aren't really rare and stuff like that. The general all-purpose herpetoculture ones that everybody has, they're all crosses of some sort, or because even, it goes to back in the day too, that some of those things weren't even considered subspecies or even full species at the time, that then later got, reclassified and became, like Brettle's python was like, and a bunch of different things like that. So, I mean, so I don't know. So anyway, to my point though, is that bearded dragons, because they have Barbata, Barbata actually come from a place that's very similar to Central Florida.
Okay.
I mean, they're more of an arboreal bearded dragon. They don't, a lot of people kill them because they keep them like Viticeps and too dry, the pure ones. Every time the pure ones become available, they disappear pretty quickly because everybody puts them in beef jerky makers and dries them out and kills them. They really need to be kept more like a frilled dragon. And then they do really well, which is, higher humidity, more access to water, stuff like that. So because our modern bearded dragons are a combination of those things, I think that also lends them more able to adapt well to high humid environments. But then on top of that, we do a bunch of things. We only let them get wet. We use the same plastic that we use to keep them warm in the wintertime. We use it, we cover them when we have multiple days of back-to-back, long rain periods. Like if they're
Yeah.
just getting a daily thunderstorm, we'll let them get that. That's actually good for them.
Mm-hmm.
They really well hydrated and they look really good when we get the daily rains. But if the sun doesn't come out and we get like a extended period of 70-ish temperatures and overcast with rain and drizzle, they get covered up. We keep them dry and we don't see respiratory infections. And I've been doing it outdoors in Florida since 1988. And
Mm-hmm.
the bearded dragon has powered my operation the entire time. So it was always the thing that gave me a reliable income that allowed me to then go off and experiment with, at the time, tegus, which were considered unbreedable. There was Bert Langerwerf was doing it, and that showed that I was like, oh my God, they are doable, and then I went my own direction with those. But at the time when I first started getting into them, before I saw Bert doing it, I'd always I always had them as pets, but I never really pursued it. And then I saw Bert breeding them, and I was like, oh my God, I was always told these things were not breedable in captivity. And Bert was up in central Alabama slaying them.
Yeah.
So the bearded dragons allowed me to mess with stuff like that.
And again, the new things that are coming out all the time, and like to your point, the UV lights that you can get now, like some of this stuff is amazing.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're keeping animals indoors as good as you could probably keep them outdoors in some areas. And people always say, you don't really need this, you don't really need that. But I think I don't have a side rack system, cage, whatever. Do what you need to do.
I agree.
I think everything has its place.
Yep.
When we moved out all the retics, we got a bunch of ball pythons, and I said, you know what? I'm not going to put them in racks. I'm going to build nice cages for them because I want to see them. Right. I want to see the animal. I don't mind having a rack system, but hey, I want to see this stuff. And we put together these cages, and now it's like, you know what? They all eat. Nobody's got an issue. So before anybody goes and telling me, oh, they're not going to eat because they're in a cage, bite me.
Right.
But I've come to the conclusion that I've got a dozen or 18 ball pythons, whatever it is, maybe a dozen, whatever. And they're in all these cages. They take up a ton of room. And it's like, I could put all those snakes in one rack or two racks and take up 10% of the space. And listen, I love my wife. She is 100% behind me. She has boas. Matter of fact, she got a boa from that show that we still have today. And it's like, you get to that point where you're like, okay, you can't really put a large boa in a rack. So, I mean, you could if you bought the huge boxes, but again, you might as well just have them in a cage. So, but now I'm back to, I'm going to put them all back in a rack system because I just don't want to deal with it. It's like, there's just too much space. So, but having snakes with UV and doing that, if you can offer it, why not? What's a $25 light? I mean,
that's really what it comes down to is that it's just kind of look, I have everything. I have rack systems. We have outdoor caging. We actually have terrarium tank systems that I built, stuff I picked. I mean, I use all of it because I think all of it is good for whatever there is no one template to follow here. It's what is best for your specific circumstances with your specific collection. What can you bet? Because it's better to have a system that you can manage better than it is maybe to try to copy somebody else's that you might not be able to it might not be feasible for you. You may not have the space, you may not have the time. There's a whole bunch of things. So I think as long as your animals are healthy and they're not running all over the neighborhood, I don't see where any of it is really any better or any worse. It's just different. And I think that's one of the things that doesn't stop me from trying to find ways. And when I look at the stuff like doing things better, I always look at it just from my point. I will give that information out if I discover something and say, hey guys, look, I found this out and I'm having better success, just to put another thing out there, into the ether, and hope that, man, maybe it'll work. Maybe somebody will find it and do great things with it. And I'll look back and say, oh, look at that. That kid took that and figured out this thing that nobody could do, and then pushed it herpetoculture further. So I don't, but so when I do stuff like that, and all these experiments and stuff that I run, part of that is me trying to keep myself engaged and not get bored.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it is trying to find, new and better ways to do things, and maybe I'll come up with something that'll actually finally make this profitable. Because up till now, it's, we've never really made any money on this. I mean, we made a living, which I can't, that's all I ever wanted out of this. If I figured if I didn't have to go to a regular job and bend a knee at some corporate thing, I'd be happy. I just didn't want to have to ever work for anybody. I wanted to be able to be in control of my own life, and this industry has given me that. So I really have nothing to bitch about, and I've gotten out of it what I wanted.
Yeah. And that's the best part of what we do. And that's, again, that's the part that when we started off earlier, we talked about the fish people, and they kind of circle the wagons. And the reptile industry is enormous. Arguably one of the largest industries out there. So
now it is,
So the other side of that too is when you look at the gun side of things in the gun industry, the firearms, when something bad happens, it doesn't matter how much they dislike one another. Everybody circles the wagons, they shut it down, and then they go back to not liking each other.
Yeah,
but there's that short period of time that they can all just get along to solve their problem.
Yeah. I mean,
go ahead.
I think I agree. I know exactly. I know what I use the gun industry actually a lot as an analogy to this, because there's a lot of similarities in this whole thing, and we're kind of facing the same kind of battle they are, except we're a lot weaker than the gun industry. So.
100%. They have, and that's where we talk about USARC. Look at the National Rifle Association. I mean, that's not a small organization, and again, nor are we. We need to look at that model and say, hey, how do we do what they're doing? And it's simple. It's all about being together and being as one. I'm sure if you got back on Facebook, I'm sure you have seen all the stuff with Texas. I have a bunch of friends over there, feel terrible for them. I hope that everybody's getting thawed out and getting their power back and getting water back. And, but
that was terrible.
But you have some of these yucks that are getting on Facebook and posting things, and I'm sure you've seen some of the backlash that's coming from it.
I've heard about it.
And listen, it goes right back to, I get some people are saying, hey, it's that guy's opinion. Everybody has an opinion. That's fine. Have your opinion. Wasn't a good idea to post your opinion on the internet at that point. Ball python 101 is ball python one and done.
It's funny. It's funny you bring that up, because I even though I reinstalled Facebook, I haven't looked at it. Tonight I listed something for the first time, but I get my information from my buddy Eddie Soto, who comes here. He's also a herpetoculturist, and he comes here about once a week. And he was here a couple hours ago, and he was telling me about that ball python 101 thing. And I was like, man, these guys just stop.
Yeah.
Man, I have controversial opinions too sometimes. Sometimes there are things that piss me off, but I don't go around telling everybody about it, because you know what? Usually when I think about it rationally, then I realize that I'm just being an idiot, and that, and I really shouldn't even, it's not affecting me. So why should I have a negative opinion of something?
Yeah, I'm the same way, unfortunately.
Everybody has that, you just got to sometimes, I don't know, man. We're all our own worst enemy in some way. So you really need to learn how to do as little damage to yourself as you can, and just don't do stupid shit. Don't lie about stuff, and don't, just just
a surefire way to kill yourself in this industry is to do what some of these people have done. And I feel terrible for all our friends that are out there in Texas, and there's some other stuff going on with another podcast or YouTube podcast. There's some stuff going on about Sean Gray, and I've never met Sean, but I've listened to some of the podcasts he's been on. I believe in what he does. I love what he has to say. So I'm going to defend Sean in any way, shape, or form. So these people that have an issue with what's going on in Texas. I used to live outside of Buffalo, New York, and I can tell you when weather like this comes in that you're not expecting, it doesn't matter how prepared you think you are.
Correct.
You are not prepared.
Correct.
We're here in Florida. We've only been through 2 hurricanes. Thank God. and both of them were scary. For people that have never been through one, hey, this is coming, so you have time. It just doesn't show up. Back, I want to say it was 2011, 2012 in that area, we had a storm in New York that's referred to in the Buffalo area as the October storm.
Yep, very well versed in it.
Yep, somebody will, I'm sure, correct me that I know. They'll say, no, it was here. But that snowstorm knocked half of the village's power in that I lived in. So our power was out. I had to go home, bag up all my ball pythons, and take them to somebody else's house in a giant box to keep them warm because we had no power for a week. So, and that snowstorm started while I was at work. I was getting out of work at 10 o'clock. It started at 6 p.m. I had a 40-minute drive home. It took me 3 hours to get home.
Yeah.
So
what it comes down to, man, is most people have been blessed to live in a fairly stable point in Earth's history, are completely ignorant of all of the bad shit that can literally happen to you without any notice, without any warning that could, I mean, you honestly do not know from one day to the next if you could be staring down the barrel of an extinction level event. I mean, there are lots of things out there that could do that to you, and you will not get any warning for that, no matter our best things. So, and obviously that's an extreme example, but just the weather. I mean, I could get hit by a tornado tomorrow. It's very possible. I can't do shit about that. If a tornado decides to come rip through this place, there is nothing that I'm going to be able to do about it. Yeah. That snowstorm was a 100-year event. Yep. And I actually looked that up to see if that was possible here in Florida, and Tallahassee actually got in 1888. I believe it was 1888. It actually got -2 in Tallahassee. Wow. In the Orlando area, it hit 19. That was a daytime high, not a nighttime low. So that in Florida would be as catastrophic, if not more so, than that 0 degrees in Dallas, because we have no ability. We are totally, if we had an ice storm in Florida, what it would do to the power system here over the entire state would be crippling. Yeah. Like I said, and it's happened before, so it will happen again. Yep. It's inevitable. I actually was afraid this one was going to dip down here and we were going to be facing some serious stuff. So I was watching it, and man, I mean, it sucks for everybody that got stuck in it, but I'm not going to lie. I was glad to see that it spared us, because I was really wondering, how the hell am I going to, if we have a day or 2 days where the daytime highs are in the 30s and we lose power, how the hell am I going to, but I think my animals, the subflooring and the fact that they're underground, and the fact that in Florida, even if we did get that it would warm back up pretty quickly. I think that saves us more so than like if you're in mainland, like in Texas, where it's going to be a while for them. Yeah. So it's terrible what happened, but that was nobody's fault. That's just how things are, There is no security. We toil under a total illusion of security across the board. Yeah. And there's absolutely none. Nobody has any security. You literally could have everything upended just like that. How many times people, my family laughs because they'll call or we'll talk to them during the week, and you might talk to them 2 or 3 times during the week, and it's always right around the same time. And it's like, what's the weather like? Oh, it's raining.
Oh, every time I talk to you this week, it was raining. Listen, between 3 and 5 o'clock, it rains every day. So between 3 and 5 o'clock, you make no plans because it's raining.
Yep.
You know, that's just that's just the first few months I was here. I remember looking at my friend Frank and saying, Frank, my brother, he's pretty much my brother, looking at him and saying, Frank, what the hell's going on? And he's like, oh man, this is every day, man. You'll get used to it.
Afternoon thunderstorm.
You know,
Yep.
You'll get used to it. Don't worry about it. And and listen, in New York, it rains for an hour. And it's like, oh, you can't even tell it rained. Here it rains for an hour. You could take a surfboard in your front yard and ride a wave.
Yep. Depending on where you live, that's true.
Yeah. And it's like people don't realize that. And again, you know, I mean, we have instant gratification where we can post something on the internet because we feel it. And unfortunately, I'm really bad. I'm really bad to the point that there's times where if I could just do what I say and just not say anything for 24 hours about it, when I hit the end of that 24 hours, I would say, damn, I'm an idiot. I shouldn't have bothered, but I can't do that. And again, you know, if it's that way, and you know that there's people that are coming up, and I always tell anybody I meet, if you ever need anything, you know, if you ever, I'm not an expert, but I'm an ear, and sometimes it only takes another voice to turn an idea into something that maybe you were just on the wrong road and it just clicks. So, you know, all the new people coming in, you know, there's a lot of people out there that are here to help you. And for every one person that shits on you, there'll be 10 that'll step up to help you out. So you just gotta find
and
us.
that's exactly. And I wish there was a little less. There's a lot of people with massive egos that I'm sorry, man. I don't see where you're getting the ego from, because, you know, I mean, I know a lot of the biggest players in the business, and they don't have the egos that I see some of these guys, you know, that have essentially done nothing, but I mean, but they're just kind of social media created.
Whores.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. I was trying to avoid that, but I was thinking
I would just go that way. It's easier just to be honest. Come on. I mean, but here's the thing. I'll say this. And listen, I promised that I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. I hate free handling, and we have a group of free handlers here in Florida that are always on YouTube. And you know what? Sooner or later, you're going to get our venomous permits all revoked, and I'm going to blame you for it because you're doing it, not me. So, but again, it's all about ego. We're just posting videos. Whereas if those guys stop the free handling, they have knowledge and love for their animals. They could do the same type of show and have it be better, more educational, and get a better following than the empty calories they have now.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I just think that's not going to happen for one reason. It's because they are monetarily tied to this at this point. And let's be honest, what they're doing clearly sells, because that's what the general public wants to see. And when you try to, you know, when you try to do things, there's a thing.
It's boring.
Responsible is boring.
Yep.
And it never pays the way, you know, I mean, it's the same shit as when you know, back in the day when you were at the checking out the grocery store, and there was all the, you know, the Enquirer magazines with the ridiculous things, and people would just pick them up and buy them. It's kind of the same thing, but hyper accelerated, because now you're not just reaching the person at the counter. Now you literally are reaching millions and millions of people. And you know, they put stupid opening taglines on their videos that are even more sensationalized. And I don't watch any of those. I've looked at them all once. And once I look at them and I see what they're all about, I'm like, yeah, no, I'd rather watch some boring lecture about, you know, something biology or UFOs or something. I'm not wasting my time with nonsense.
It's Scott E. Pierre is from Australia, and he said it. He said it on one of the live streams that we were on. Venomous snake keeping is boring. And it is. Yeah. You're moving a snake from a cage to a can. You're picking up shit, cleaning out water, putting the snake back and shutting the door, and you're done. There's no interaction. You know, it's not, you know, you don't have to pick up a monitor and take a good look at it. You're just going through that progression, and it is boring. And I'll be the first one to say that you get it going and it's just one after another, just boring as can be. And that's the best part about it. It isn't so much having the animals as much as it is being able to look at them and watch them and see what they do and how different it is. But you're definitely right.
Yep.
You'll never get away from sensationalism.
Nope.
It's not going to happen. Unfortunately, that's what it is. All we can do is hope that it at some point curves, because like I said, they will cause the fall of some of these permits. It will happen.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think just like that situation we were talking about previously with stuff getting away, I think just irresponsibility in general is always going to be a problem. It's you know, the real problem in my estimation is not so much, I mean, irresponsible people are a problem and they need to be dealt with. But the worst thing is the way that we handle irresponsible people, because the irresponsible people generally don't pay the price that all of us do when some idiot does something stupid. Why the hell do we punish 99% of people that are involved in something just to try to take out that one bad apple? Why don't you just pull the bad apple out and throw it away and leave everybody alone? If somebody's doing something irresponsibly, fine them. You bring in, there's your tax money. You get the money that you wanted. Your state gets revenue. You're punishing this guy. Make the fine stiff enough so that it actually hurts, so that they think twice about it. But nobody wants to be held accountable, and people don't take personal responsibility. I mean, there are plenty of people that do, but there are a lot that don't.
So I work in the pharmaceutical industry, and I'm a food safety and sanitation manager, aka King of Garbage. So that's what our friend said. You are the King of Garbage. That is you. And I'm like, all right, you know, that works if it's. But in all honesty, here's the deal. I run my department the way that I would run anything else. So if you do something wrong, I'm going to talk to you. If you do it again, I'm going to write you up. If you do it again, I'm either going to suspend you or fire you, depending on the mood I'm in that day.
Yep.
So if you do, and listen, there's no free handle rules. There's nothing saying you can't do it. Let's just put that out there. Let's be honest. I don't agree with it, but that doesn't mean that you can't, or your animals. I get it. But irresponsibility is irresponsibility. And when we do something wrong and we don't get punished or don't get even a slap, it's like, okay, I can just continue to do this and nobody's going to say anything. I rule the roost now. I tell them what to do. Yep. And I think that's one of our biggest downfalls. And listen, Fish and Wildlife, they're just not smart enough to pick up on that and say, hey, you know what? We're going to ticket this guy and make money and just continue to ticket him until we revoke his permit, and then just leave everybody else alone. If everybody else is doing it right, this CSP rule sucks. It downright sucks. And for all of us that had a permit, were inspected, did everything the way we were supposed to, jump through hoops to get there, it was like, oh, we're not going to ban tegus and iguanas, and we all went, whew, okay, that's good. They're going to just add them to CSP. Oh yeah, we're going to add them to CSP, and then, oh, by the way, the rest of you guys that have everything, we're going to ban all that stuff. And it was like, wait, what? Yeah. How did we go from one extreme to the other? What did we do? What did we do?
I think that the regulating agencies would probably prefer to go the fine. Yeah, fine them and get their money, because they're cash. Even government is cash driven, just like everybody else. Everybody's got their bottom line. Everybody's out to try to make a living. Everybody, So when you look at it that way, I think the reason that they act the way they act is because these things get sensationalized in the media, and then you get all this public outcry. If you go and you look at any of the news articles on any of this stuff and look at the comment section under it, it's pretty clear what we're up against. And there literally are usually thousands of posts from idiots saying, oh, you got to get rid of these people. Particularly in America, we've become this society that we paint everybody, we put everybody in a a box. Like, look at how many people believe that that operate currently under, just on the political thing. I'm not going to get political, but this is just a commentary that so you have the country split. Half of the people believe that half of their neighbors are communists. The other half believe half of their neighbors are fascists. Neither one of those things is true. Everybody wants pretty much the same shit. They want to be left alone. They want to be free to pursue their thing. They have differences of opinion in how to go about that. But I think at the end of the day, we have more similarities with each other than we have division. But all of these bad people, and I mean, pretty much all of our politicians at this point are trash, have been mining this for at least 30 years, and they've successfully split us. You know, they've gained a lot of power as a result of that. Divide and conquer is extremely powerful. And we do that with everything. So if some guy makes it on the news that keeps cobras and gets bit or gets loose in the neighborhood, all of a sudden, these, and the news does an article, it says, there's so many keepers of these things. Now all of a sudden everybody that keeps that is the same as this scumbag that did this thing. So we all get thrown in a box, and we're that, and then they go after us. And that is the history of America the last 20 or 30 years. And even in, you see it happening in Europe and all over the place. That's what we need to stop. Everybody just needs to sit back and say, maybe I shouldn't be looking at trying to put everybody in this little box. Maybe we all belong in the same damn box. And when one of us in the box takes, screws something up, that person should get their ass kicked and be punished for it.
Yeah.
But because we're all together there. So but we need to do that with everything, not just with the reptile thing. And that's why we have all of this shit that's going on. We have the gun issue, all of the issues they're all the same thing though. If you look at it, if you break them down to the base, they're all basically the same thing. There's some group doesn't like the other group, so they go out of their way to try to get rid of the other group by and then the lawmakers react to that because they're getting pressure. And so you have that going on.
So we talked about it a little while ago, and we've talked about this in our group chat, and some with friends of mine. And what just happened with Ty is, in my opinion, and it's my opinion, this guy, Paul. I just want to make sure that it's clear, because somebody's going to watch this and say, oh, it's somebody. No, it's me. Ty's got money, and he got away with it. Here's the thing. If you got it, you got it. And unfortunately, I think, again, there's black and white, right and wrong. We can take guns away. Does that mean that bad people aren't going to do bad things and get them? We've made drugs illegal. People still sell drugs, and people still buy drugs. People still get guns illegally that can't have them as well. So the same thing happens with reptiles. That people that shouldn't have them still manage to get them. And
correct.
It's unfortunate that that's the way that it is. And you're right. Everybody should be in one box. And when one person messes up, no matter what it is, whether it's drinking and driving, texting and driving, having a firearm illegally, owning animals, dog fighting, whatever, you should be put into that penalty box and subsequently fined whatever the fines would be. And again, if that affects you that much, it's going to change the mind of other people that are following behind you, and they're going to go, maybe that's a bad idea. Maybe I'll go that way. When I first started at the company that I'm at, there was an issue with some operators and signing some paperwork or something. I don't really know all the details, but I was asked, what would I do with the 8 individuals that were involved? And before the sentence was even done, I just said, fire them all.
Yep.
You falsified a document, put your name on it. Bye. Have a nice day.
I agree.
Set the precedent, because then the next guy's going to go, maybe I'm not going to just sign this. I think I'm going to do the job right. So it's very difficult, in this time. And, I always say this, thanks to all of our troops, the police departments, all the first responders, the things that they do for us. I'm sure, you're here in the Orlando area, and, I think that's one of the biggest things is when we have animals like this, we need to involve them and let them know what they're potentially walking into if there is ever an emergency. So
yeah, I mean, I think that in general, that's part of the permit system here, though. I think that comes up, but I don't know.
no, they with the venomous stuff.
Oh,
No?
with venomous, yeah. See, I don't
Yeah.
keep any venomous, and
Yeah.
I did when I was younger. When I was a kid,
Mhm.
it was much easier to get a venomous permit. I
Yeah.
had puff adders and
Oh, cool.
stuff like that. Yeah, I used to catch a lot of rattlesnakes and sell
Okay.
them into the trade back in cottonmouths and stuff. But yeah,
Cool.
I've stayed away from all that, so I'm not really as versed in that. But I mean, yeah, dude, I don't know, man. It's just about, honestly, it's so simple. Just fucking be personally responsible.
Yep.
That's it. Just be
Yep.
responsible. If
Be
you fuck
accountable.
up, fall on your sword, admit it that you did it, fix it, and move on. Not this trying to get out of stuff and pushing the blame on some whatever. Everybody has another witch to burn. I mean, we've been burning witches in this country for hundreds of years. It never stopped.
Yeah.
We just find new ones, but now we just do it in whole blocks of people rather than individuals. We're burning this group for this and this group for that. Everybody just shut up, get along, mind your own business. If you work every day to make your life better, you'll end up making everything better.
Yeah, you don't even have to. Goddamn, you don't have to like everybody.
Yeah, exactly. There are lots of people I don't like, but I'm not
Yeah.
going to try to get rid of them.
Yeah.
That's their
Just-
thing. Let them
yeah,
do their
just-
thing.
Let them do. The irrelevant people will make themselves irrelevant soon enough.
Exactly.
And it doesn't take you or me or anybody else to point that out. Sooner or later, you're going to disappear. So
yeah. That, I mean, even if we break it down to just the industry itself, I've been in this a long time, so I've seen a lot of people come and go. And in general, just like you said, the ones that do bad things, the ones that do stupid things, irresponsible things, they don't last. They may be around, they may make a bunch of noise for a couple of years. Most of them are gone within 36 months. Some of them eke it out a little bit longer. Some of them clean their act up and run respectable things after a while. Some of them just need a flogging here or there to get the memo to.
Nothing wrong with a good flogging.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
No, you know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yep.
that's. I just don't know, man. I that's one of the reasons why I get away from social media for a time, because it, like you said when we were talking earlier, but I guess before you started recording, with your anxiety problem, I also have like super anxiety. Like I've been having so many panic attacks the last couple of weeks that I thought I was having a heart problem. So it so I get that, and social media makes it worse because you're inundated with all this negative shit. So man, let me tell you something. You back off it, delete it all, step away for a couple months. I just play. I'm a big MMO, World of Warcraft player, EverQuest, stuff like that. I just disappear into that for the winter time. All the animals are sleeping. I don't need to do much, and I just get away from all the crap that's going on. Then in the spring, when I got to actually promote the business again, and help out and do stuff, then I reluctantly step back out.
It's funny because we see a lot of podcasts or we hear a lot of podcasts and see a lot of YouTubers that talk about social anxiety, and I have a social anxiety where I've never been a big person at concerts, sporting events,
Yeah, me neither.
big crowds of people.
Yep.
Like Daytona is okay because it's an open, and if I need to walk away, I can walk away. And I can tell you there's times that me and my wife will go to Walmart and just go grocery shopping, and she'll look at me and be like, you should go to the car. You don't look good. Yeah. It's like people bump into you, and as soon the first time, that's it. And from that point on, I'm like, I'm getting palpitations in my chest.
Yep.
My head's spinning. I'm sweating profusely.
Yep.
I've actually had people come up and say, "Sir, are you all right?"
Yep.
And it's like, "No, I'm not. Just I need to go. Just get out of my way." So, anxiety is a big deal, and a lot of us deal with it, and we all deal with it in our own ways. I don't know about you, but if I'm having a real big panic attack, one of the things that I do is just go out in the garage and grab an animal or poke around out there, and it sometimes it melts it off, unless of course you stick your hand in something and it gets bitten, and then you're like, that didn't help, but we all have to cope with it. And social media is bad, and it's only getting worse. And I've left every group because of that,
Yeah,
because
I
it's
did.
like you can't say anything.
No, yeah, the groups are just terrible. I left them all. People keep every time I go back in, somebody added me to something. I left myself in the one. There are a few that are like good and
Mm-hmm.
they're legit, but they have they have very small, like they're kind of exclusive, like I'm in
Yeah.
one that it's got a bunch of what's advanced herper something. I don't know
Yeah.
what it is, but it's a small group of people, and they're like people that are serious, and nobody gets on there and does. There's no, everybody puts, even if they have a reason to have a big ego, they set it aside. Like nobody really has a reason, but you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying. I mean, if they've done some stuff,
Yeah.
you cut them some slack. But even if they do have that, they put it aside in there, and they're just, you know, talking about the hobby,
Yep.
what they're passionate about. So the problem is that a lot of them, those bigger groups they're just people jockeying for recognition that have done nothing but talk.
Yep. Yeah.
So,
Yep.
and that's the problem I have with it. But
Yeah. I
I'm like,
mean,
yeah, I
it's
don't want
always
to
going
deal
to
with you.
be, it's always going to be there. We're never going to get rid of it. Again, I just did it was a Thursday night last week. I had Stephen Cush on from Cold Blooded Cafe and Reptech.
Yep.
And one of the things that Stephen said that really resonated with me was, for all of us good people, you, myself, him, other great people in the industry, if we can all use social media and put out 5 minutes of content, and he didn't say this part, this is just me being me,
Right.
5 minutes of content a week that's positive, all these other clowns that are in the middle there just spewing dumb things that some
Right.
videos I watch and I scratch my head and I say, did you paid for that animal? And you don't even know what you're talking about.
Right.
You're so far off, you're in another state. But if we all did that, it would wash those people away sooner or later. The problem we have now is when we go onto somebody's thread and say, hey, that's really not correct.
Right.
This is even in a professional manner. Like,
Yep.
I sent a very professional mannered message to somebody, and the response I got was very disheartening. And it was like, okay, you're threatening me over the internet.
Right.
I mean, come on, man. I gave you a very professionally worded, as a consumer, my critique on something, and you immediately went to, F you, I'm going to fight you, you're dead, I'm going to break you in half, blah, 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 blah. But I think if enough of us put out that good content, I think Steven's right. I think it'll wash that stuff away. And Fish and Wildlife does watch videos that are on YouTube. I hate to tell everybody that, because my Fish and Wildlife officer actually watched my unboxing video and called me and asked me, where's your import permit? I'd like to see it.
No shit.
Oh, yeah. So thank God I had it. But those are things that those guys are watching. They may not watch every single one, but they have time too. They have YouTube as well. So
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, man.
yeah.
But I agree with you on that. I've always tried to use my social media presence to
Mm-hmm.
do positive things. I will either, post my own stuff, or if another herper catches my eye where I see that they're doing something that I think is notable, I will share and I do that all the time. I probably actually have shared more other people's stuff than I have of my own posts, because I'm just like, I'm a fan of a ton of people. There's a lot of people that have come up in the last 30 years. In the entire range. There's kids in their 20s that are doing awesome shit right now.
Yeah.
There's guys in their 30s, guys in their 40s. There's all these people. I shouldn't even just say guys, because there's a lot of women doing some awesome stuff too.
Yeah, there's a lot more women now, so which is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah,
Awesome.
the demographic definitely changed in the mid 2000s.
Oh yeah.
women really came into the industry, and some of them have made a pretty big impact. There always was like Tracy Barker and stuff like that, and Linda Switzer, but within the last 10, 15 years, there's a lot more that have come in that have done notable stuff, that really good shit. And so, but I mean, but there's, like I said, there's a lot of people that have come up. I'm fans of all of them. I keep
Yep.
track of them. I know who they all are. I keep track of them in some way or another. I either look at their ads or see what they're posting. And so I share stuff that I think is cool. And I think that's what people should be doing rather than, you know, I just, before I post something, I just ask myself, is this negative? Do I really want to be negative? Sometimes there's a need to be negative, but
Yeah.
more often than not, it's not necessary. And in matter of fact, more often than not, it's just you're patting your own ego by posting something negative.
Yeah.
Whereas you should say, you know, is this really going to do anybody, me or anybody else, any good from posting it? And if the answer is no, and it's not a resounding, if the answer is not a resounding yes, this is a positive thing that I should be posting, and there's some question about it, then just don't do it. It's that simple. It's not a hard thing to do. Apparently it is for some people, but
yes. And listen, I'm guilty at times of coming back and posting something, and I post it, and then as I'm hitting go, I'm like, maybe I should have said that.
I've done that too.
Or I'll type something, delete it, type it, delete it, type it, delete it, and back out. And I'm like, I can't think of what I want to say, and this isn't good.
Right. So, I actually stopped posting when I'm pissed. If something pisses me off, I have learned, because when back in the kingsnake.com days, I used to get myself, I was like in my 20s at the time. I had made a name for myself in the business at an early age, which is both good and bad. The good thing was, hey, I got a lot of it done early, and I was pretty young when I got it. The bad thing is everybody got to watch me grow up and do all the stupid shit you do when you're younger in front of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so, so I did, so it wasn't, and I think that's what's going on too in a lot of ways. I think a lot of these people that post dumb stuff are just kids in their 20s, and at that point you think you know shit, but let me tell you something, Sonny, you don't know nothing.
And you're going to learn, and it's not, let's rewind that a little bit and say, it's not that you don't know anything. It's that you are going to learn much, much more as you go on if you are open-minded. When you hear somebody say, you don't know what you're talking about, look at the person that's saying it to you. Is it another person that doesn't know what they're talking about? Or is it somebody that you can rewind and go back on kingsnake.com and go back into the archives and go, oh shit, he was saying the same thing, but look, a year later, he ate his own words and came back and said, oops. So listen to those people. Those are the ones that we want to listen to. And trust me when I say there's a lot of, 20-some-year-olds out there that have that ego and they don't want to be told anything. They want to do it their way. And I get that. You got to learn. So coming from somebody that's in his mid 40s, at times I need to learn that, it's just not worth saying anything. Let them do their thing, and they'll either figure it out and change and succeed, or they'll continue to fail until they give up.
Yeah, until they're gone. So it's like, and that's basically, I said stupid things that I regret. I've made up, like I had this thing with Jeff Ronnie in 1999 where when I produced the first Motley boas, I made an assumption that because I bought the Motley boa, the original one from Strictly Reptiles, I bred it to a completely unrelated boa constrictor, and half of the babies came out Motley. So then looking at what had been done with ball pythons, I made the claim from that first breeding, oh, this is a co-dom. I called them a co-dominant, even though they're at the time, incomplete. That's what everybody called it. Incomplete. So anyway, I made a claim they were co-dominant, claimed there was a super form, but I had no proof of that. And Jeff Ronnie called me out on that and said, look, you've proven that it's genetic in some way, but you have not proven anything. You don't know that one wasn't a head. You can't possibly know that there's a super form. And I was like, you don't know. I had such an ego at the time. So I was like coming off of that whole blue tegu thing where everybody was blowing smoke up my ass and all that stuff. So it went to my head and I was stupid. And I came back at him and said, you don't know what you're talking about. I don't remember. So anyway, him and I never talked. I was furious. I basically in my head, I said, oh, he's just a hater, and filed him away. And then about, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 years after that, I got my ass kicked by life right around 2004.
Yep.
And I started to come back to earth and realize, you know what? That was because my 250 Tegu farm imploded. That's why I disappeared for 10 years. I didn't actually disappear. What I did was, after that, I sold my house, moved to another spot, set up a bunch of bearded dragons, and started producing bearded dragons for Mark Bell at Reptile Industries on a large scale. And they go to Petco and PetSmart. So that for that 10 years that I wasn't involved in the industry, I was still in the industry. I was just underground from the hobby. Yeah. And I was just producing thousands of dragons. But anyway, during that time, I had a lot of time to sit and think, and I was like, man, I'm such an idiot. I can't believe that, you know? So eventually, a couple of years ago, I ran into Jeff at Tinley. It was the first time I'd seen him in like 20 years. I was like, hey man, I'm really sorry about that. I had wanted to apologize to him, but I wanted to do it in person, and him and I just hadn't crossed paths. So I finally, you know, a few years ago got the chance, and I did it. And it was, I mean, he's just awesome.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, I've talked about him and said, you know, hey, if you rewind and go back in time, again, I remember talking to you about the blue tegus, and hey, you're keeping them outdoors. How are you keeping them? And you're like, oh, I'm buying this plastic sheeting from Home Depot. And I'm like, fuck, I'm in New York and they don't sell it here. I'm like, this sucks. But I remember Jeff, the first one to come out with a DVD price list, and you know, he's mailing. People are sending a paper price list, and he's sending out.
I bought one. Yeah, I bought one of the, or ordered. I don't remember, but yeah, I got one of those from him.
And it's like, these look back at those times and think about where you were then and what the internet is now and what you could have done. You know?
Yeah, I never imagined it would get.
No.
The fact that I have the iPhone that's like a super powerful computer that fits in my pocket, I use for practically everything that I do. It's just, I never thought we'd be in this spot.
So. Oh, for sure. So why don't you go ahead, plug yourself, social media. I'll post it in the description as well. It'll all be down below, as everybody says. Go ahead and plug yourself and what you got going on. If you want anybody to know anything, you know, are you guys doing any upcoming shows?
No shows for the foreseeable future. We will eventually go back to doing Tinley and Daytona, but right now Heather has a pre-existing condition that makes COVID extra risky. So until that whole thing gets calmed down or under control or whatever, we're not going to be doing any kind of big events like that. And we will no longer, I don't think we're ever going to go back to doing Repticon show circuit again. I think that's actually been a blessing. Once we got off of that ride and realized that it was kind of a waste of time, we should have just been selling stuff, shipping, and our lives are better. We're not, because at one point we were doing almost 36 shows a year.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So that's 36 weekends on the road, and that was rough.
Yeah, I bet.
So anyway, the best way to get a hold of us is through her business, which is Fairy Tale Dragons, through Facebook, Instagram. Me, you can find me as Ron St. Pierre on Facebook. I just turned my Facebook back on tonight because I did this show, and I figured, well, it's time to come out of hibernation a little bit.
Warm up.
And, you know, I mean, you know, we're working on a bunch of Anoles projects that are cool, that are, you know, they're big, but they're not too big, and they're probably really good for the pet trade. And I think eventually they'll have more of an impact. A lot of hobbyists probably get a lot of enjoyment out of them, especially if you like geckos or arboreal animals. You know, and hopefully some lace monitors this year, maybe some Spencers.
Yeah, those are really neat looking monitors.
Yeah, they're cool, man. I'd never seen those in person until they brought them, and those were put on loan by Ryan Johnson and Scott bought. John Egan had another group of them, and he bought them. So we have 6 now, 6 adults, and hopefully they're breeding right now. So I'm fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thanks for coming on. We will definitely, at some point get you back on. And I mean, I know with COVID, we were going to come out and see you guys, but, we kind of put things on hold. So hopefully that'll clear up soon so that we can get out and hang out. And
yeah, get with me when it warms up a
Yeah.
little bit. And by then,
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Things should be good.
For sure. All right, sir. Well, you have a great evening. Again, thanks for coming on. This was great. And I will let you know when it's coming out.
Thanks, man. You too.
Awesome, brother. You have a great evening.
You too.
Yep. Bye.